You know, a serial killer is typically a person who murders 3 or more people, over more than a month with a cooling-off period, a significant break between the murders. This break differentiates a spree killer from a serial killer. Serial killers tend to have a pattern in their murders, have mental illnesses, and have a wide range of motives, such as psychological gratification, thrill-seeking, financial gain, or attention-seeking. Serial killers have such a profound impact on society that they have their own subculture generated around them. However, despite high body counts, not all serial killers are caught and manage to elude authorities. This is a list of suspected serial killers that have yet to be caught and cases that have yet to be solved, so that you may enhance your useless knowledge of serial killers. This list is supposed to be in alphabetical order.
3 young girls were kidnapped, horrifically raped, and then murdered thereafter from the years 1971 to 1973. The killer became known as the Alphabet Killer because each girl's first and last name started with the same letter: Carmen Colon, Wanda Volkovich, and Michelle Maenza. Each child was 10 or 11 years old, discovered in a city that started with the same letter as their name, lived in a poverty-stricken home, and each suffered from academic challenges in school. Due to the fact that each of the victims of the alphabet murders had these things in common, it was believed that the killer likely worked with a social service group. Many even thought that they could have known the families, or that they worked at the school where the children attended. Although hundreds of people were questioned, the killer was never caught. Investigators have also theorized that a series of killings with similar circumstances in California, in the late 1970s, is connected to these 3 murders. Kenneth Bianchi, cousin of the Hillside Strangler, was a particular notable suspect, where he has repeatedly tried to have investigators officially clear him of suspicion. While never charged, there is circumstantial evidence that his car may have been seen at 2 of the murder scenes.
Beginning in 1911, a killer whose methods mimicked the famed Jack the Ripper murdered at least 20 black women, from prostitutes to working-class women and mothers. Each murder attributed to the killer occurred on a Saturday night, and for one spring in 1911, a fresh body turned up every Sunday morning. Amid a stifling investigation, slayings continued until 1915. As many as 6 men were arrested for the crimes, but investigators never discovered the identity of the killer, or killers, despite having several suspects in custody. Since much of the South was still gripped by racism and segregation, the killings weren't given the attention they deserved until the Ripper had already amassed a large number of victims, and caused a citywide panic that could no longer be ignored. The first victim to make the front page was actually the 8th victim slaying, and each successive murder was known to be more brutal than the previous, such as going from throat slashing to skull obliteration using a railway coupling pin. What is further notable is that the killer pinned notes to fireboxes across the city nearly 2 years after the murders occurred, promising to murder all black women found in the streets at night.
In 1918, during the night, a serial killer who became known as the Axeman broke into a series of Italian grocery stores and attacked the grocers and their families. As the name implies, the victims usually were attacked with an axe, which often belonged to the victims themselves. In most cases, a panel on a back door of a home was removed by a chisel, which were both left on the floor near the door, followed by an attack on one or more of the residents with either an axe or straight razor. The crimes were not motivated by robbery, and the perpetrator never removed items from his victims' homes. Many believed the crimes were ethnically motivated, due to the majority of victims being Italians, and some others say that he was a sadist who only killed male victims when they obstructed his attempts to murder women. A letter purported to be from the Axeman said he would kill again at 15 minutes past midnight in March 19, 1919, but would spare the occupants where a jazz band was playing. However, no further murders occurred. 6 were injured during his various attacks as well.
Namibia's B1 butcher earned his name because he only left body parts. In November 2007, a torso was found in a garbage can beside the country's Central B1 road. 3 days later, 2 thighs were found in separate places along the road. It was only after a month that the victim was identified as Sana Helena Garros. Her head, feet, and the remainder of her legs were later discovered by farm workers. It was the latest in a series of killings attributed to the butcher, who began his reign of terror in 2005. The first victim was Melanie Jantz, whose mutilated body was found in August 2005. The next body, found in September, was 21-year-old Juanita Mabula, who had been decapitated. After the funeral, Juanita's aunt said,
"The most difficult thing for us was to bury our sister without her head."
The head in question was found a few weeks later. On December 28, 2005, the youngest victim was found, 18-year-old Viola Swartboy. Her body was too badly decomposed to establish the cause of death. In October 2007, the Namibian police teamed up with specialists from national intelligence and brought in serial killer experts from neighboring South Africa. Just a month later, a head and a set of forearms were found in a plastic bag near a hospital. While there may be other victims, none have been found, and the butcher himself remains at large.
Many serial killers leave a calling card with their victims. Beer Man got his nickname because some of his victims were found with empty beer cans next to them. Some sources say all of the bodies were accompanied by a can, others say 4, some suggest only 2. Whatever the truth, the press latched onto the name. Between October 2006 and January 2007, Beer Man killed 7 men in Mumbai, India. The victims were all men, beaten or stabbed to death, with many undressed below the waist. Police reported that the killer had performed unnatural sex with all the victims. In January 2008, Ravindra Cantrol was convicted of a 7th murder, that of a homeless man. He was charged with 2 other Beer Man murders but cleared of any involvement, thus leaving the remaining 6 murders unsolved. In September 2009, the Bombay High Court acquitted Cantrol of any involvement in the murders due to lack of evidence. The forensic tests conducted on him were judged inadmissible, as was the eyewitness testimony of a person who said she had seen Cantrol for a few seconds and remembered his face 2 months later.
In Belgium, 5 murders occurred in or near the city of Mons. All victims were women discovered in garbage bags in a canal or a river that were not weighed down. The bags were always clearly visible. Investigators pointed out early on that the butcher of Mons found something perversely funny about his activities. For instance, his dumping sites all bore morbid names like Rue de Depot, Dump Street, Chemin de l'Inquiétude, the Path of Worry, and the rivers Haine, Hate, and Truille, Jitters. The police also theorized that the butcher of Mons may have had some kind of medical training, for each victim had been dismembered and mutilated with precision. The FBI, which was called in to consult on the case, deduced that the killer had a steady job based on the fact that all of his victims were murdered on weekends. The official assessment of the butcher of Mons made by Belgian psychiatrists concluded that the unknown killer was a meticulous anal retentive whose murders were neat, if not obsessive. During the investigation, several people were suspected of being involved in these murders, but no concrete evidence was found against them.
Three women between the ages of 25 and 32 were found murdered in Glasgow in what is considered to be one of the most extensive manhunts in Scottish criminal history. All of the women were young brunettes and had all met their murderer at the Barrowland Ballroom, a dance hall and music venue in the city. The 3 were raped, all were strangled with their stockings, all 3 were menstruating at the time, and all had sanitary towels or tampons left on, or near, their bodies. And all 3 women's handbags are missing. The contents discarded near them. This unidentified serial killer became known as Bible John, due to his having repeatedly quoted from the Bible and have condemned any form of adultery while in the company of his final victim. The murders committed by Bible John would prove to be the first time in Scotland in which the Crown Office authorised the publication of a composite drawing of an individual suspected of murder for public viewing. The known movements and modus operandi of convicted serial killer and rapist Peter Tobin have led to suggestions he may have been responsible. But DNA tests were unable to connect him with the murders.
Over a span of 5 months, 3 victims were found dead after they disappeared after parties in the Aboriginal community in Boroville. The first person to disappear was 16-year-old Colleen Walker, who was reported missing on September 13, 1990. Her body has not been found. The second to disappear was Walker's cousin, Evelyn Greenup, on October 4, 1990. The third victim was 16-year-old Clinton Speedy Duru on February 1, 1991. All 3 of the victims were Aboriginal and the 2 bodies that were found both had severe trauma to the head. Colleen Walker's body has not been found, although articles of her clothing were later found weighed down by rocks in the Nambucca River. The prime suspect, a local laborer, was charged and tried twice, in 1994 and 2006, but was acquitted both times. On September 13, 2018, the NSW Court of Criminal Appeal decided that the prime suspect could not be retried for the murders. On March 22, 2019, the High Court of Australia confirmed this decision. The murders, and the fact that no one has been convicted of the crimes, is a source of pain and bitterness in the Aboriginal community in Boroville.